I'm 92 years old, and today I realized something that broke me more than anything else ever has. My phone hasn't rung in days. I gave them everything: my youth, my strength, my entire life. I live in a small house in Denver, Colorado, the same house where laughter once filled every corner. Now, when I wake up in the morning, the silence feels heavier than ever. Even my own footsteps sound too loud, like they don't belong here anymore. The phone has been lying next to me all morning, untouched, silent, like it has forgotten its purpose. I keep it close, not because I expect anything important, but because a small part of me still hopes it might ring. It's an old habit now, waking up, sitting by the window, and placing the phone right beside me, as if it were a companion. I don't even realize when my eyes drift toward it again and again, waiting for the screen to light up. Sometimes I think I hear it, a faint vibration, a distant sound. My heart reacts before my mind does. I reach for it quickly, almost desperately, only to find the same blank screen staring back at me. No missed calls, no messages, nothing. Just silence. The kind of silence that slowly sinks into your chest and makes itself at home there. There was a time when this same phone wouldn't stop ringing. Back then, it felt like I could barely get a moment of peace. Calls from work, calls from friends, and most of all, calls from my children. Dad, can you pick me up? Dad, I need this. Dad, are you coming home early? Their voices filled my days, and I never once thought of it as a burden. If anything, it made me feel needed, important, alive. Now, the silence feels louder than any noise ever did. It stretches across the room, filling every corner, reminding me of what's no longer there. I try to distract myself sometimes, adjusting the curtains, fixing things that don't really need fixing. But it doesn't take long before I find myself back in the same spot, glancing at the phone again. I've memorized every small detail of it. The tiny scratches on the screen, the way the light reflects off its surface, the slight delay when I press the button to wake it up. It's strange how something so small can hold so much weight. It's not just a device anymore. It's a connection to a world that feels like it's slowly drifting away from me. I tell myself not to expect anything. I remind myself that people are busy, that life moves fast, that everyone has their own responsibilities. I understand all of that. I truly do. But understanding doesn't make the waiting any easier. It doesn't quiet the hope that rises every time I look at it. So I sit here, listening to the ticking clock, feeling each second pass a little heavier than the last, my eyes returning to the phone without even thinking, holding on to that fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, it will ring. At 92, mornings come earlier than they used to. I don't need an alarm anymore. Sleep slips away quietly, leaving me awake before the sun has fully risen. The room is dim, filled with a soft gray light that slowly grows stronger as the minutes pass. For a while, I just lie there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the stillness around me. There's no rush to get up, no plans waiting for me, no voices calling my name. Eventually, I sit up, slowly, carefully, feeling the weight of the years in every small movement. My hands tremble slightly as I reach for the edge of the bed, steadying myself before I stand. The floor feels cold beneath my feet, a quiet reminder that another day has begun. I make my way toward the window, step by step, the same path I've walked countless times, yet it feels longer now. When I pull the curtain aside, the outside world is already beginning to wake up. Cars pass by in the distance. People move along the streets, heading somewhere, carrying purpose in their steps. I watch them for a while, wondering what it must feel like to still be needed somewhere, to have a place to go, a reason to hurry. Inside this house, time moves differently. It stretches, it lingers. The clock ticks loudly, filling the silence that no one else breaks. I can hear every second, as if it's echoing through the walls. Sometimes I catch myself just standing there, doing nothing, lost in the sound of time passing. I head to the kitchen, more out of routine than hunger. I prepare something simple, the same way I always do. The motions are familiar, almost automatic, but there's no joy in them anymore. I sit down with my cup, staring at the empty chair across from me. It used to be filled. There used to be conversations, laughter, little moments that made mornings feel warm and alive. Now it's just me. I take slow sips, letting the quiet settle around me. Every now and then, I glance toward the other room, as if expecting someone to walk in, to break the silence, to remind me that I'm not alone. But no one comes. The house remains still, holding its breath in a way that feels endless. After a while, I return to the same spot near the window, sitting down as the sunlight grows stronger. It falls gently across the floor, touching the walls that have seen so much life, so many memories. I let the warmth reach me, even if just a little. This is how most mornings begin now, slow, quiet, and heavy with a loneliness that words can't fully explain. This house wasn't always this quiet. There was a time when every corner held a different kind of noise, a different kind of life. Now, as I sit here, it feels like the walls are holding on to those memories more tightly than I ever could. I look around, and everything is still in its place, but somehow everything has changed. The living room used to be the heart of it all. I can almost see it the way it was. Small toys scattered across the floor, cushions out of place, the sound of laughter bouncing from one wall to another. Back then, I would sometimes wish for a little peace, just a moment of quiet. I never imagined I'd one day have too much of it. There's an old chair by the corner that I still haven't moved. It creaks the same way it used to when I would sit there after a long day. I remember coming home tired, my body aching, but the moment I stepped inside, everything felt lighter. The children would run toward me, their faces full of excitement, their voices overlapping as they told me about their day. That feeling of being welcomed, of being needed, it made everything worth it. Now, that same chair just sits there, untouched most of the time. Sometimes I sit in it and close my eyes, trying to bring those moments back. For a few seconds, it almost feels real, like if I listen closely enough, I might hear their footsteps again. But when I open my eyes, there's nothing. Just the same quiet room staring back at me. On the walls, there are still a few old photos. I've looked at them so many times that I don't even need to get close anymore. I know every smile, every expression, every memory behind them. There's one where we're all together, standing close, arms around each other. We look so happy. I often wonder if they ever look at those same pictures and remember things the way I do. Even the smallest things in this house carry a story. The dining table where we shared meals, where conversations stretched long into the evening. The hallway where little feet once ran back and forth without a care in the world. The kitchen that was always full of movement, of voices, of life. Now, it all feels frozen, like time stopped here but kept moving everywhere else. Sometimes I walk from room to room, not because I have anything to do, but because I don't want to sit still for too long. Each step brings back something. A sound, a feeling, a moment that refuses to fade completely. It's comforting in a way, but it also reminds me of everything that's missing. This house is still standing just like it always has, but instead of being filled with life, it now holds memories, quiet, distant, and slowly slipping further away. There was a time when laughter lived here like it belonged, like it would never leave. It wasn't something rare or occasional. It was everywhere, in every room, at every hour, woven into the simplest moments of our days. I didn't have to look for it. It came naturally, filling the air, making this house feel warm in a way nothing else ever could. I can still hear it sometimes if I sit quietly enough. The sound of little voices echoing down the hallway, the kind of laughter that comes without worry, without hesitation. It used to spill out of their rooms, mix with the clatter of dishes in the kitchen, and drift into the living room, where I would be sitting after a long day. It was never just noise, it was life itself. Even the smallest things could turn into moments of joy. A simple game on the floor, a joke that didn't even make much sense, or a silly mistake that sent everyone into fits of laughter. I remember pretending to be annoyed when things got too loud, telling them to calm down, to be quiet for a while. But deep down, I loved every second of it. That noise meant everything was okay. It meant we were together. Dinner time was always the loudest. We would sit around the table, plates filled, conversations overlapping. Everyone had something to say, and no one wanted to wait their turn. I would listen, sometimes joining in, sometimes just watching them, taking in the way their faces lit up when they spoke. Those were the moments I didn't realize I should hold on to tighter. There were evenings when we would all gather in the same room, not doing anything special, just being there together. Someone would start laughing, and within seconds, it would spread to everyone else. It didn't need a reason. It just happened. And when it did, it felt like nothing in the world could ever go wrong. Now, when I walk through this house, it's hard to believe those days were real. The same walls that once carried those sounds now hold onto a silence that feels unfamiliar, almost out of place. It's not just the absence of noise. It's the absence of everything that made this place feel alive. I sometimes catch myself smiling at those memories just for a moment. But the smile fades quickly when I remember how long it's been since I last heard that kind of laughter. It's strange how something so ordinary at the time can become so precious once it's gone. Back then, I thought those moments would last forever. I thought there would always be another laugh, another evening, another chance to sit together and share those simple joys. Now, all I have are echoes, faint, distant reminders of a time when this house was filled with laughter. My children were never just a part of my life, they were my whole world. From the very beginning, everything I did, every decision I made, somehow led back to them. Their happiness became my purpose, their needs became my priority, and their future became the only thing I truly cared about. I still remember the day each of them came into my life, the way I held them for the first time, so small, so fragile, completely dependent on me. In that moment, something changed inside me. It wasn't something I could explain back then, but I knew I would do anything to protect them, to give them a life better than mine. As they grew, my days began to revolve around them. Mornings started with getting them ready, making sure everything was in place before they stepped out into the world. Evenings were about listening, really listening, to everything they wanted to share. Their stories, their small victories, even their worries. Nothing felt too small or unimportant when it came to them. I found joy in the simplest things. Watching them learn something new, seeing the excitement in their eyes when they achieved something, hearing them call out for me when they needed help. Those moments, as ordinary as they seemed, were everything to me. They gave my life meaning in a way nothing else ever could. There were times when things were difficult, when providing for them wasn't easy. But I never let that show. I carried those worries quietly, making sure they never felt the weight of it. To them, I wanted to be someone strong, someone they could always rely on, no matter what. I gave them my time without counting the hours. I gave them my energy even when I had none left. I gave them my patience, my understanding, my love without expecting anything in return. It never felt like a sacrifice. It felt natural, like it was simply what a parent is meant to do. They trusted me completely. When they were scared, they came to me. When they were happy, they shared it with me first. In their eyes, I was everything, someone who could fix things, who could make everything better. And I held on to that role with pride, never wanting to let them down. As they grew older, I watched them slowly become independent, learning to stand on their own. It was something I always wanted for them, something I worked so hard to make possible. Seeing them take those steps into their own lives filled me with a quiet kind of happiness. But even as they moved forward, they were still my world. That never changed. No matter how old they became, in my heart, they were always the same children I once held in my arms, and everything I ever was, everything I ever gave, was for them. A life of sacrifice doesn't always feel like sacrifice when you're living it. At the time, it just feels like doing what needs to be done, making choices without hesitation, because someone else matters more than you do. I never sat down and counted what I was giving up. I didn't keep track of the things I missed or the dreams I quietly set aside. All I knew was that my children needed me, and that was enough. There were long days that turned into even longer nights. Work didn't end when I left the job. It followed me home in the form of responsibilities, bills, and constant worry. Still, I never let it show on my face. When I walked through that door, I made sure to leave all my exhaustion behind, because inside, I wasn't just tired, I was needed. I remember the times I went without things I wanted, sometimes even things I needed. New clothes, small comforts, moments of rest. I pushed them aside so they wouldn't have to. If there was something extra, it always went to them first. Seeing them happy made everything feel worthwhile, like every small loss on my side was actually a gain. There were nights when I barely slept, not because I couldn't, but because there was always something more to do. Planning, worrying, thinking ahead, making sure their future would be secure. I would lie awake, staring into the darkness, wondering if I was doing enough, if I could somehow do more. Sometimes life became overwhelming, but I never allowed myself to stop. I kept going, even when my body felt heavy, even when my mind felt tired. There was no room for weakness, not when there were people depending on me. I told myself that I could rest later, that there would be time for me someday, but that someday kept moving further away. I missed moments for myself, opportunities I could have taken, paths I could have followed. There were dreams I once had, goals that once felt important. Slowly, they faded into the background, replaced by a single focus, giving my children the best life possible. And I didn't regret it. Not then. Not even now. Because every sacrifice came from a place of love, not obligation. It was never forced. It was chosen, again and again, without question. I became stronger because I had to be. I learned to carry more than I thought I ever could. And through it all, I kept moving forward, never stopping to ask what it was costing me, never wondering what I might be losing along the way, because in my heart, nothing I gave up ever felt as important as what I was giving to them. Sleepless nights became a quiet part of my life, something I never questioned, something I simply accepted. They didn't feel heavy back then. In a strange way, they felt meaningful, like those long hours in the dark were where love showed itself the most. I remember the nights when one of them would fall sick. It never mattered what time it was or how tired I felt. The moment I heard even the slightest discomfort in their voice, I was awake, fully awake. Sitting beside them, placing my hand on their forehead, checking their temperature again and again, as if my touch alone could make things better. The house would be completely silent, but my mind would be filled with worry. Every small movement, every breath they took, I noticed it all. I would sit there for hours, sometimes not even blinking, afraid that if I looked away for a moment, something might change. There were nights when I would walk back and forth, holding them gently, trying to calm them, whispering soft words I don't even remember anymore. Words didn't always matter. It was the presence, the feeling that they weren't alone, that someone was there for them no matter what. I would tell them everything would be okay, even when I wasn't completely sure. I would smile for them, even when fear was sitting quietly inside me. Because in those moments, they needed comfort more than anything else, and I made sure they found it in me. Sometimes I would stay awake until morning, watching the first light come through the window, feeling a quiet sense of relief when they finally slept peacefully. Only then would I allow myself to close my eyes for a little while, knowing they were okay. And even on nights when they weren't sick, sleep still didn't come easily. There was always something on my mind, plans for their future, worries I didn't speak out loud, questions I didn't have answers to. I would lie there, staring into the darkness, thinking about how to make their lives better, how to give them more than what I had. But no matter how tired I felt the next day, I never let it show. When morning came, I got up, just like always, ready to start again. Because their world didn't stop, and neither could I. Looking back now, those sleepless nights don't feel like something I lost. They feel like moments I gave, pieces of myself I offered without hesitation. Every hour I stayed awake, every bit of rest I sacrificed, carried a kind of love that words can't fully explain, and if I had to live it all over again, I would still choose those same nights, those same quiet sacrifices, just to be there for them when they needed me most. There was a time when I had dreams of my own, quiet ones, simple ones, but they mattered to me. I remember thinking about the kind of life I wanted to build, the places I hoped to see, the things I wished to achieve. Back then, it felt like there was still time for everything, like the future was wide open and waiting. But life has a way of shifting your path without asking. Slowly, without even realizing it, those dreams began to move aside, not because they weren't important anymore, but because something else became more important: my children. I didn't make a big decision one day to give everything up. It happened in small moments, little choices that didn't seem like much at the time. Choosing to work an extra shift instead of taking a day for myself, deciding to spend money on their needs instead of something I had wanted, putting off my plans again and again, telling myself there would be time later. Later, that word stayed with me for years. There were opportunities I could have taken, chances to do something different, to build something for myself. I remember hearing about them, thinking about them for a moment and then letting them go. Not because I couldn't, but because I chose not to, because I knew those choices might take something away from what I could give my children. And I didn't want to take that risk. I convinced myself that my dreams could wait. That one day, when everything was settled, when they were grown and independent, I would finally have time to return to those pieces of myself I had set aside. It felt like a fair trade at the time, their happiness in exchange for my patience. Years passed quietly, and those dreams slowly faded into the background, not gone completely, but distant, like something I could barely reach anymore. Every now and then I would remember them. A small thought, a quiet feeling, a brief moment of wondering what could have been. But those moments never lasted long, because right in front of me was something real, something present, my children growing, learning, becoming who they were meant to be. And every time I looked at them, I felt certain I had made the right choice. I didn't feel like I had lost anything. I felt like I had invested everything into something that truly mattered, something bigger than myself. Now, when I look back, I can see those dreams more clearly than before. I can trace the path I didn't take, the life I could have lived. But there's no bitterness in it, no regret that weighs me down, because every dream I set aside became a part of the life I built for them, and in a way, everything I once wanted, I gave to them instead. Watching them grow was one of the most beautiful things I ever experienced. It didn't happen all at once. It was slow, quiet, almost unnoticeable in the moment. But when I look back now, it feels like it all passed in the blink of an eye. I remember the first steps, small and unsteady, filled with both excitement and fear. I stood close, ready to catch them if they fell, my heart racing with every little movement they made. When they finally walked on their own, even for just a few steps, it felt like the greatest achievement in the world. I was proud in a way words could never fully capture. Then came the days of school. I still remember holding their hands as we walked to the gate, feeling how tightly they held onto me. There was always a moment when they would look back before going inside, as if they needed to make sure I was still there. And I always was. I would stand there a little longer than necessary, watching until they disappeared from sight. As the years passed, those small hands slowly let go. They didn't need me to walk them to the door anymore. They didn't look back as often. At first, I didn't notice it much. It felt natural, like a part of growing up. I told myself this was exactly what I wanted for them, to become independent, confident, ready to face the world. Their voices changed. Their thoughts became deeper. Their lives grew bigger. They made friends, built their own interests, started dreaming their own dreams. I watched from a distance, proud of who they were becoming, even if it meant they needed me a little less each day. There were moments when I wanted to hold on to time, to slow it down just a little, to keep them small for a while longer, to hear them call my name the way they used to. But time doesn't stop, no matter how much you wish it would. I celebrated their achievements quietly, sometimes more excited than they were. Every success felt personal, like it was something we had reached together, and every challenge they faced, I felt it too, even if I could no longer fix everything for them the way I once did. Little by little, they stepped further into their own lives, and I stepped back not because I wanted to, but because I knew it was the right thing to do. I had spent years preparing them for this moment, teaching them how to stand on their own, and they did. They grew into the people I always hoped they would be. Strong, capable, independent. Everything I worked for, everything I dreamed of for them, became real, and as they moved forward, building their own worlds, I remained behind, watching quietly as the distance between us slowly grew. It didn't happen all at once. There was no single moment where everything changed. It was slow, almost invisible at first, like something quietly shifting in the background while life kept moving forward. If I try to think of when it began, I can't point to a specific day. I only remember the feeling that something was becoming different. At first, it was the little things. Conversations that once felt full and unhurried became shorter. Where we used to sit and talk without looking at the time, now there always seemed to be somewhere else to be, something else waiting. I told myself it was normal. Life gets busy. People grow. Responsibilities increase. I understood that. They had their own lives now, their own routines, their own circles. I was proud of that. It meant they were building something for themselves, just like I always wanted. So I didn't question it when they started calling a little less often. I didn't think much of it when days passed without hearing their voices. Then days quietly turned into weeks. When they did call, the conversations felt different. Not empty, but distant. Like there was a space between us that hadn't been there before. Their words came quicker, their attention divided. Sometimes I could hear the world around them. Cars passing, people talking, distractions pulling them away even as we spoke. I would listen more than I talked, holding on to every word, trying to stretch those moments just a little longer. But there was always an end waiting. I have to go, they would say, and I would respond the same way every time, telling them it was okay, telling them to take care, even when I wished they would stay just a little longer. Visits started to change too. They became less frequent, less certain. Plans were made, then postponed. Something came up, maybe next week. I'll try soon. Each time, I accepted it without complaint. I didn't want to make them feel guilty. I didn't want to be a burden. So I stayed quiet. I told myself this was just a phase, that things would settle down, that life would slow, that we would find our way back to those longer talks, those simple moments together. I held on to that belief longer than I probably should have. But slowly, without me even realizing it, the distance grew. Not just in miles, but in something deeper, something harder to explain. The connection that once felt so strong, so natural, began to feel fragile, like it could slip away if I held onto it too tightly. And maybe that's why I didn't hold on. I let things be. I gave them space, thinking it was what they needed, what was best for them. I adjusted to the quiet, to the shorter conversations, to the empty days in between, and somewhere in that quiet change, without any warning or clear reason, everything that once felt close slowly began to feel far away. It didn't feel sudden when the calls started to fade. At first, it was just a small change, something easy to overlook. A missed day here, a delayed call there. I told myself it didn't mean anything. People get busy. Life demands attention. It was natural, I thought. There was a time when the phone would ring almost every day. Their voices would fill the room, bringing warmth with them. Sometimes the calls were short, sometimes they lasted longer, but they were always there. That small connection, that simple sound of the phone ringing made all the difference. It reminded me that no matter how far they were, we were still close. Then slowly, without any clear reason, those calls began to space out. What used to be daily became weekly. What was weekly turned into something less certain. I started noticing the gaps, even if I tried not to think too much about them. Days would pass, and I would catch myself glancing at the phone more often than before, waiting without admitting that I was waiting. When the phone finally rang, it felt different. There was a sense of relief, almost like something inside me had been holding its breath. I would answer quickly, trying to sound calm, trying not to let that quiet longing show in my voice. I didn't want them to feel pressured. I didn't want them to think I needed too much. So I kept it simple. I would ask how they were, listen to their updates, their busy schedules, their responsibilities. I would tell them I was fine, even on days when the silence had felt heavier than usual. I learned to keep my words light, to avoid saying anything that might make them worry or feel guilty. And then the calls became shorter. There was always something waiting on the other side for them. Work, errands, people, life moving quickly around them. I could hear it in the background, the constant motion that didn't leave much room for stillness. Our conversations became something to fit in, something to manage between everything else. Eventually, even those short calls became rare. Weeks would pass without hearing from them. I stopped expecting the phone to ring at a certain time. There was no pattern anymore, no routine to hold on to. Just silence stretching longer each time, filling the space where their voices used to be. I tried not to question it. I told myself they were doing well, that they were living the lives I had worked so hard to give them. That should have been enough to comfort me, but it didn't stop the quiet feeling that something important was slipping away. Sometimes I thought about calling them myself. My hand would reach for the phone, hesitate, and then slowly pull back. I didn't want to interrupt. I didn't want to be another responsibility in their already busy lives, so I waited instead. I let the days pass, telling myself that the next call would come, that things would somehow return to the way they used to be. But deep down, I could feel that what was once so natural, so constant, was slowly becoming something distant, something uncertain, something that no longer belonged to everyday life. At first, the promises felt like something I could hold on to. They came with a softness in their voices, a kind of reassurance that made everything seem certain. I'll come see you soon. Next week, I promise. We'll sit together like before. I believed every word, not because I was naive, but because I trusted them the way a parent always does. Those promises gave shape to my days. They turned ordinary moments into something meaningful. I would begin to think ahead, quietly planning without making it obvious. Maybe I would cook something they used to love. Maybe I would clean a little more carefully, making sure everything looked just right. It wasn't about perfection. It was about preparing for a moment that mattered. As the days got closer, I could feel a small change inside me, a kind of lightness, a quiet anticipation that made the hours feel longer but also more alive. I would find myself listening more closely for sounds outside, checking the time without realizing it, imagining how it would feel when they finally walked through the door, and then just as quietly the call would come. Something had come up, work, responsibilities, something urgent that couldn't wait. Their voices carried a hint of apology, a softness that showed they didn't mean to disappoint. I'm really sorry. I'll come next time. Let's plan again soon. And each time I would respond the same way, telling them it was all right, that I understood that they should take care of what they needed to do, because I did understand. Life changes, priorities shift, Things don't always go the way we expect. I never wanted to make them feel guilty, never wanted to become something that added pressure to their lives. So I accepted it gently, without letting my voice reveal what I felt inside. At first, the disappointment didn't stay long. There was always another promise waiting just ahead, another, soon, to hold on to. It felt like a delay, not an ending, like something that would happen, just not today. But over time, those soons began to stretch further apart. The certainty in their words became less steady, more careful. Plans sounded less like plans and more like possibilities. I started to notice it, even if I tried not to. The way their tone changed, the way the promises felt lighter, as if they could drift away at any moment. I stopped preparing as much. I stopped letting myself fully believe. But even then, a small part of me couldn't help it. Every time they mentioned visiting, I would picture it again, just for a moment. I would imagine the door opening, their voices filling the house, the silence finally breaking. And every time it didn't happen, that quiet hope faded a little more. The days that were meant to be special passed like any other. The meals I thought of cooking remained unmade. The rooms stayed exactly as they were, untouched, waiting for something that never arrived. Eventually, even the promises themselves became rare. They didn't disappear completely, but they became something distant, something uncertain. And without realizing it, I stopped holding on to them the way I once did, letting them pass through my thoughts without settling, without taking root. Because somewhere along the way, I understood that some promises are not meant to be broken, just slowly forgotten. Waiting has become a part of my days now, so natural that I don't even question it anymore. I don't mark time the way I used to, with plans or places to go. Instead, I measure it in moments, in glances toward the phone, in the quiet hope that rises and falls without anyone noticing. I keep the phone close, always within reach. It rests beside me like something important, something that still has the power to change the day. Every now and then, my eyes drift toward it without thinking, as if my heart is checking before my mind even realizes it. Sometimes I think I hear it ring, a faint sound, just enough to make me pause. My body reacts quickly, almost instinctively. I reach for it, my fingers moving faster than they usually do, a small rush of hope building inside me. But when I look down, the screen is dark, silent, unchanged. And just like that, everything settles back into stillness. I tell myself it's nothing. Just my mind playing tricks, filling the silence with something it wishes were real. But it happens more often than I care to admit, that brief moment where hope feels so close, only to fade just as quickly. There was a time when waiting felt different. Back then, it always led to something. A call, a visit, a voice on the other end that made everything feel connected. Now waiting feels endless, like a road that doesn't quite lead anywhere. Still, I wait. I don't always sit in one place. I move around the house, slowly, quietly. But no matter where I go, that sense of waiting follows me. It's there in the background, steady and patient, like it knows it doesn't have to rush. Sometimes I pick up the phone myself, not because it's ringing, but just to hold it. I look at the screen, scroll through old call logs, familiar names that once appeared so often. I don't press anything. I just look, letting the memories fill the space where the present feels empty. I wonder what it would feel like to see their names appear again, to hear their voices without expecting it, without waiting for it. That simple surprise, it feels like something far away now, something that belongs to another time. The hardest part isn't the silence itself. It's the hope that still exists within it. That small, quiet belief that maybe at any moment something could change, that the phone might ring, that the silence might break, that the distance might somehow close, even if just for a few minutes. So I sit with that hope, even when it feels fragile, even when it fades and returns again. Because as long as I'm waiting, a part of me still believes that the sound I'm listening for hasn't disappeared completely, and that one day, without warning, the silence might finally be broken by the ring I've been holding on to for so long. Being forgotten is a strange feeling. It doesn't happen all at once, and it doesn't always hurt in an obvious way. It's quiet, almost gentle at first, like something slowly fading into the background. You don't even realize it's happening until one day you look around and notice how empty everything has become. I don't hear my name the way I used to. There was a time when it was called out from every corner of the house, sometimes all at once, filled with urgency, excitement, or even small complaints. Now, days pass without anyone saying it at all. It's as if that part of me exists only in memory. But even in this silence, something inside me hasn't changed. I still think about them the same way. Every day in small, quiet moments, my mind drifts back to them. I wonder how they are, what they're doing, if they're happy, if they're healthy. These thoughts come naturally, without effort, like breathing. They were my world once, and in many ways, they still are. Sometimes I sit and remember the little things, their favorite foods, the way they used to laugh, the small habits that made each of them different. Those details haven't faded for me. If anything, they've become clearer over time, like my mind is holding onto them more tightly now. I don't feel anger. I don't feel resentment. There's no part of me that wishes things had turned out differently in a way that would make me bitter. What I feel is something softer, something harder to explain. A quiet kind of acceptance mixed with a love that never really goes away. Even now, if the phone were to ring, if they were to walk through that door, I wouldn't hesitate. There would be no questions, no complaints, no reminders of how long it's been. I would welcome them the same way I always did, with open arms and a full heart, as if no time had passed at all. Because love doesn't keep track of time the way we do. It doesn't measure distance or count the days of silence. It simply remains steady and unchanged, even when everything else shifts. And that's the part of me that still holds on, even in this quiet, even in this loneliness. Being forgotten doesn't mean I've stopped caring. It doesn't mean those years disappeared or lost their meaning. If anything, it has shown me how deep that love truly was, how much of myself I gave without ever expecting it to be returned in the same way. So I carry it with me gently, without letting it turn into something heavy or painful. I let it stay as it is, pure, patient, and still alive, because even if the world has moved on and left me behind, the love I gave has never left me. If there's one thing I've learned after all these years, it's that time doesn't move the same for everyone. When you're young, it feels endless, like there will always be another day, another chance, another moment to say what you didn't say today. But as the years pass, time begins to feel different. It becomes quieter, faster in some ways, heavier in others. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm not asking for anything that feels impossible. I just want you to understand something that many people only realize when it's too late. The people who raised you, who stood by you when you had nothing, who gave you everything without ever keeping score. They don't need grand gestures. They don't need perfection. What they need is something much simpler, something that seems small but means everything. Your time. A few minutes out of your day. A simple phone call. A short visit. A message that says you're thinking of them. These things may feel ordinary to you, but to someone who is waiting, they can light up an entire day. They can fill a silence that has been sitting there for far too long. Life will always be busy. There will always be work, responsibilities, distractions pulling you in different directions. That never really changes. But what does change, quietly and without warning, is the time you have with the people who love you the most. One day, without realizing it, those chances become fewer. The calls you thought you could make later, the visits you kept postponing, they begin to slip away. And when you finally look back, you might find that the time you thought you had is no longer there. Don't wait for that moment. Don't wait for a reminder that comes too late. Don't assume that love can always be expressed tomorrow. Sometimes, tomorrow doesn't come the way we expect it to. If someone once held your hand when you couldn't walk on your own, if someone stayed awake just to make sure you were okay, if someone built their entire life around giving you a better one, then they deserve more than just your memories. They deserve your presence. So reach out while you still can. Sit with them, even in silence. Listen to their stories, even if you've heard them before. Let them feel that they still matter, that they are still seen, still remembered. Because in the end, it's not the big things that stay with us. It's the small moments, the simple connections, the time we chose to give when it mattered most, and one day you'll be grateful that you didn't let those moments pass you by. And if this story touched your heart even a little, take a moment today to reach out to someone who once gave you everything. Before you leave, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and press the bell icon so you never miss stories that remind us what truly matters in life. This video is a fictional story created for emotional, educational, and awareness purposes. Any resemblance to real persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. The content is intended to highlight real-life social issues and emotions, but does not represent any specific individual or event.